All right, they're about to resume this hearing right now, and the bottom line is here, for those thinking, or those Republicans who were concerned about this hearing happening and the way it was going to roll out with Dr. Ford and the accuser of Judge Kavanaugh, and the concern originally, she wanted to testify second after the judge, so they said, no, you're going to testify first. We're going to have a prosecutor talking to you, not us, asking the questions. Early to say, and we have to wait to hear from the judge. We also have to see where the prosecutor, Rachel Mitchell, is going here. But they might regret the format and how this is going about, because as smart and as surgical as this Rachel Mitchell has been, Democratic senators have been free to ignore, which they have, and ask pointed questions, more praise of their own toward the professor, and that could come back to boomerang on them. Jonathan Turley is joining us now on the phone, the George Washington University Law School professor. Jonathan, good to have you back. What do you make of how this is going?
Well, I'm not too sure the Republicans really expected a takedown because the questions could not be aggressive without creating bad optics. But the pace is obviously glacial from the perspective of the Republicans. This is a typical foundation-laying approach, but they have very limited time, and Mitchell's going to run out of time. I think that the most interesting questions coming from Mitchell in terms of credibility focused on her drive back from the party. And I expect we'll see more of that now when they come back. Because she asked, you didn't drive yourself after the alleged attempted rape. Someone else did, and she said that was true. And there was just one follow-up question. I'm sure there's going to be more, which is, well, hasn't that person talked to you? I mean, she describes herself as being very upset, running from the party. Obviously, she left before she expected to. And so I think that was the area where I thought Mitchell laid some damaging foundation for Dr. Ford. And we'll see if she's going to follow up on that.
Jonathan, what about the judge when he eventually gets up there? If you think about it, he's being questioned by Rachel Mitchell with the same sort of prosecutorial approach. Let's get your story versus her story, compare the stories. He says this never happened. Of course, Dr. Ford has said, I'm 100% sure it's Brett Kavanaugh. And then, of course, you'll have the Democratic senators going after him as well, probably bring up these other women's names. What do you expect from that portion of the event?
Well, it's going to be a very different hearing because the reluctance on both sides to be perceived as aggressive or drilling down on this witness is simply not going to be there with Judge Kavanaugh. The Democrats have already said that they believe her. They believe her. They believe he's an attempted rapist. They're not going to be putting on kid gloves. They're going to go after him with hammer and tongs. The problem for him is that he's pretty much locked into playing defense. If he goes on the offense, he looks like pursuing someone who says she's a victim of an attempted rape. And yet, if you stay on defense, it's pretty hard to gain any yards.
So he's left to say that this never happened. His position has been, and even an interview with our Martha McCallum, that never happened, never occurred. I don't know what happened. Maybe something did happen with Dr. Ford, but it wasn't me. She's brought up his friend who was there at the time. And, of course, Democrats, more than a few have mentioned, boy, we ought to get him in here to talk to him and all. So that this would be enough of a distraction where it's each one's perceived credibility. We could forget about in the eyes of the public. What about those wayward senators, even some of the Republicans? Jeff Flake, for example, is among those who could eschew deferring to Rachel Mitchell and ask questions of his own. But what do you make about those who were on the fence and all the Republicans who still might be on the fence? Does this cement a yay or no vote? What do you think?
I don't think that this turns out well for Kavanaugh if it's a tie. The optics are not good. I think she is presenting herself well. I have a column out at the Hill today saying that what's missing here is a standard of review, that these senators, particularly the Democrats, have gone out of their way to say there is no standard review. We're not a court of law. We don't have any obligation in terms of what evidentiary standard we use. My Hill column really questions that and says that that's just too easy. What it suggests is that senators should adopt what's called the clear preponderance of the evidence standard. That's lower than beyond reasonable doubt. It's higher than mere preponderance. Many people say it's about 75% confident on one side or the other. But these senators, I think, are moving in a very dangerous area when they're basically saying we don't have any standard to apply, and that just leaves this just as a credibility gut check. And when senators do that, they go with the politics. They go with whatever their gut tells them is good politics at the moment.
So that might explain Michael Blumenthal's position. He's talking to reporters here. I won't bring us back to it, but he, of course, has been saying, we should, delay a vote on this. Others have gone even stronger to say that the judge should step down and saying that this woman's credibility proves it. Now, credibility is always in the eye of the beholder, and remember details from stuff almost 4 decades ago. Maybe that's something in the balloon that's popped or pierced as we go on here. But the better she does or is deemed to be holding her own, by definition, raises that possibility that the judge never makes it.
Well, it's pretty tough. He's told you can't get your youth. So that's the reality of this situation for him. He's going to go in, and I expect he's going to speak with more passion. I think what was lacking in his prior testimony was that he appeared product. He appeared stupid. Even in his past interviews, the repeated certain lines. All of that's got to drop away. We're going to have to see a human being behind that table if he's going to get through this. And more genuine Brett Kavanaugh, his feeling, not scripted or robotic. And I feel angry. But, she is coming across, and I think this is genuine, as a vulnerable person who truly believes these allegations. And I think that resonates with the public. Brett Kavanaugh is going to have to show that he's a person, too, and that it's very frustrating to face these types of allegations. You have to prove a negative and constantly say, I'm not an attempted rapist.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. She's going to say if he had his way, he would have raped me. He's going to say that's ridiculous. And then, let alone the American people and who they believe, it's those crucial senators on that committee, including Jeff Flake and some other Republicans, when this gets into the full Senate, who are going to decide this. Jonathan Turley, thank you very, very much.